And we are recording, and the meeting has started, and the public has been admitted.
Great. So I'll call the meeting to order. April 19th. Welcome to the ADR meeting. For those of you in the audience who are either presenting projects or commenting on projects. Just as some of you haven't been here before, I'll let you know that the way this works is when we bring up a project, the town discusses it briefly. Matthew will present it from the town's perspective. Then the owner and or their team will present it further, answer any questions from the ADR. We will then open it up to the public, and any member of the public is free to comment about any aspect of the project for up to 3 minutes. And after the public has made all of their comments, I will bring it back to the ADR so we can discuss it and make our recommendations to the town council. The first order of business tonight is the approval of the minutes for the March 15th meeting. I was not there, so I'll need someone else to suggest that be approved and seconded if you are okay with the summary.
I can make a recommendation. I think, Joey, you're on mute still. I can make a recommendation to approve. No adjustments from my perspective.
I second that.
Okay, and now we have open time for public comments. I know there was at least one group of people who were going to use the 3 minutes to talk about something that is not on the ADR agenda.
So thank you, Mark. It's Elizabeth Robbins and Julie McMillan. So thank you for letting us speak about Measure I, which is a renewal of the parcel tax for paramedic services. It's on the June 7 ballot, and I'll explain a little bit about how the services are structured, and Julie will discuss the specific services. But paramedics, they're the first responders for the 911 calls, and paramedic services are separate from the police and fire services. Small towns don't have their own paramedic department. So in Ross, the 911 calls are answered by the Ross Valley Paramedic Authority, and that's a regional group formed in the 90s to oversee paramedic services for Ross, Kentfield, San Anselmo, and a number of other towns. For the past 40 years, the paramedic services have been largely funded by an annual parcel tax. It's currently $91.50 per parcel per year. And this 4-year tax is up for renewal, and it's on the June 7 ballot. Julie McMillan and I are chairing the campaign to renew the tax.
So now it's my turn. Hopefully we're under the 3 minutes. The Ross Valley Paramedic Authority provides rapid, highly professional levels of care. Renewing the parcel tax preserves the number of on-duty paramedics ready to respond to medical emergencies and accidents, and ensures that local paramedics are highly trained and equipped with advanced life-saving equipment. Plus, there's no cost to families for the ambulance transport to the hospital. The paramedic tax contributes 2/3 of the cost, and billing of private insurance companies contributes the other 1/3. An added bonus for us is that the Ross Valley paramedics are housed right here in Ross, providing more rapid response times for our citizens. In 2018, the paramedic parcel tax passed in Ross with 79.7% of the votes. 899 votes total. Elizabeth and I are hoping for a similar level of support on June 7th. The tax requires 2/3 majority to pass, and we hope you'll join us in voting yes on I to renew the paramedic parcel tax. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Julie, I'm sorry, you said it needs 2/3 to pass?
Yeah,
And it passed 71% last time?
79.7.
Oh, 79%. Okay, so
Yeah,
it
sorry
was
if
quite safe. No,
Yeah.
I must have misheard. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you too for getting more people informed about that issue.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
letting us talk.
Bye.
Sure.
Good luck with your meeting.
It's a good thing to support.
Yes.
Yeah, kind of a no-brainer, but
Chair Krushnet, I should note another member of the audience has their hand up.
Okay.
Ive Hogland.
Hi there. I was Len Rifkin was trying to get in and he can't get in. He was in early and got kind of kicked off somehow. So he was just wondering if you could let him in.
So he has to join the meeting, and if he can
Yeah.
join the meeting, we can admit him.
Yeah, he has to join the meeting.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for letting us know, Ive, and Matthew will keep an eye out for someone who's in the waiting room and he'll let him in as soon as possible.
Okay, great.
Okay, so the first order of business is repeat business, 1 Ames Avenue, and we'll let the town discuss the newest version of the plans.
Thank you, Chair Akrushnit. Sharing my screen at the moment. This is the second review for the planning application at the Mozafarian residence at 1 Ames Avenue. This was previously heard at the March 15th meeting. As a reminder, the property characteristics are it's a lot that exceeds the 1 acre minimum lot size. It's a relatively flat lot and regular shape. It is located in the flood zone, contains the existing single family residence here and an attached garage here and detached pool house here. Here we see the revised project plan. Again, a reminder, the project involves renovations and additions to the main residence, minor additions and renovations in these locations, a second story addition in this location. A revision that has occurred here is the entire structure has been brought into conformance with the side yard setback, including the existing first story garage. So this area now entirely conforms to the setbacks. The project also involves constructing a new accessory building in this corner of the lot. Previously, the accessory building included some pool structures, including an outdoor pool, an outdoor shower and pool equipment that was pushed to the back of the residence. In the revised plan, the outdoor shower has been eliminated. There's no additional pool accessory structure except for the mechanical room, which would contain the pool equipment. And so under this configuration, the only setback encroachments, or I should say setback into the underlying zoning district setbacks, are the ADU, which is allowed to encroach, and the mechanical equipment for the pool, which is subject to a minor exception under the code. So as I've just indicated, design review is required for a number of different project components. Demolition permit is required to alter more than 25% of the minor exception is required, whereas previously variances were required for setbacks encroachments. The only setback encroachment right now involves, again, the pool equipment, which is subject to a minor exception, and an accessory dwelling unit permit, which is ministerial in nature. Public notice and comments involved a 300-foot notice. The owner at 3 Upper Ames objects to the project and cites primary concerns as the potential visual and privacy impacts. And the ADR group has received all the communications sent to staff on that issue from the adjacent property owner. Also, comments and support have been received from the 5 property owners listed there. Staff's recommendation is that the ADR group allow public comments, discuss the merits of the project, and provide a formal recommendation to the town council regarding the merits of the project. This concludes staff's brief presentation. I would now open it up to the architect to provide further information on the project design, such as other elements of the project that were revised, including landscape and privacy screening. And I do believe the owner of the subject property and the owners of the adjacent property also want to present information at some point tonight. So I will now stop my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Now the owners and their project or project team can do whatever presentation they would like.
I'm sure that Darius and Aaron would like to speak, but I'm Jared Polsky, the architect at Mark, and just want to very quickly list the changes we've made last meeting. Number one, we moved the bocce court, which was shown in the setback, out of the setback. We moved the play structure that was in the setback out of the setback. We took out the outdoor shower attached to the ADU, as Matthew mentioned. We also lowered the chimney outside of the kitchen for the barbecue and fireplace. It was suggested, and it was a good suggestion from the ADR. The exterior fences, I hope you had a chance to read the Mozaffarian's response, but this is not just some house on the street. It's their front yard is their backyard is their front yard, and so they are requesting more privacy on the fencing on Shady Lane, provide privacy for the pool and their play area, and a little more privacy on Ames. They do have a 50% open gate as required by code. The pool equipment was an issue. We had it sticking out into the setback. It was still farther away from the property line than the existing pool equipment, but we've moved it into the structure of the ADU and is now quite considerably farther away from the rear setback than the existing equipment. The garage, original garage, the garage as it stands now is a little over 2.5 feet into the setback, into the side yard setback. And we had shown the second story following the line of the garage. Well, we've decided to rebuild the garage out of the setback, the second story out of the setback entirely. And at the request of the neighbors at 3 Ames, we've also clad the exterior wall of the second story in cedar, so it won't be as visible as a white stucco wall towards their house. As to height, we're well under the height limit, but one of the board ADR members suggested that we might want to raise the height of the kids' bedroom wing to hide the pool, to hide the solar panels, which was an excellent suggestion. And we did that. We raised it 1 foot. And we have a number of landscape issues that we have been working with the Conifers, the people, the owners of 3 Ames, and Brad Eichste, our landscape architect, is here to talk about that. So if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer.
Thanks, Jared. Go ahead, Brad.
Hi, Brad Eichste, landscape architect. We have worked diligently on providing screening and a comprehensive landscape plan. We met with the Conikers as suggested at the last ADR meeting. And we walked the site and we've made some proposed changes and adjustments to help with providing greater privacy screening. One adjustment that we made even prior to this meeting was to add an additional redwood tree at the driveway area. And so instead of 2 36-inch box redwood trees, we now have 3 36-inch box redwood trees. And per that meeting, we adjusted the location to help screen the Conikers' home from Ames Avenue. Along the tennis court, along the west property line, we've talked quite extensively about the screening along the tennis court area. And we are proposing a new 6-foot fence there. And we would be open to raising the height of that fence to 7 feet, understanding that it would require a variance or an exception. One of the comments suggested from the Conikers was to upsize the hedge plant material there. And we agree with that. We'd be open to having 24-inch box Elaeocarpus hedge there. One note that I wanted to make was that we added an additional row of Elaeocarpus hedge at the garage area, which was allowable because we pushed the garage back out of the setback. Along the south property line, at our meeting, it was discussed that the Conikers wanted to keep the chain link fence that's there, but we still wanted to add a wood fence onto our property line. So that chain link fence is right on the property line, which in order to put a wood fence, we really only have about a little bit less than 2 feet of planting by the time we give up some space for the chain link fence with the ivy. So we can't really fit 24-inch box hedge in that space. So, we kind of got to stick with the 15-gallon, but if it'd be open to taking out the chain link fence and the ivy, we would be open to upsizing that Elaeocarpus hedge as well. We did make an adjustment to the trees that are in the sculpture garden right by the guest house there, the existing guest house. And we are open to upsizing those magnolia trees. They were previously birch, and it was suggested that we do an evergreen there. And we were fine with changing the birch to magnolia. And we're fine with upsizing those to 36-inch box as well. We don't think 48-inch box, at that point, we don't think we could fit as many trees in, and we would need a crane to get them in there. And a 36-inch box magnolia tree is 12 to 14 feet in height by 8 to 10 feet in diameter. So we think that that's going to help provide more visual screening for that south side of the property. The last suggestion was the plants behind the ADU. And currently in this location, there's thriving English laurel shrubs that are about 10 to 15 feet in height. And that's the reason that we are proposing additional English laurel plantings in this area. They're doing very well. The fire department loves the English laurel because of the big waxy leaf that is very fire safe. So we wanted to stick with our English laurel shrubs in this area because we think they'll do the best and fit the character of all the English laurel hedges that currently exist on the property. I think that covers it. You know, I just want to reiterate that we share the same goals as the neighbors. We really want to have privacy, and we want to work together and have screening and property separation and help with the visual impact. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody else has here.
Thanks, Brad. Okay, so now I'll open it up to the ADR members who might have any questions of either the town or the project design team. I can't see if you have your hand up, but Matthew will be able to see.
No questions from me, Mark.
No questions.
we-
No, no questions.
Or Stephen?
No.
No questions.
Okay, great. Well, then I will open it up to the public, and anybody who wants to comment on this may comment on this project for up to 3 minutes. Matthew, do you see anybody with their hands up?
I do not see anyone with their hands raised. So I do not see anyone that wants to comment.
We do.
It's not true.
I see Ive Hogland, just, were you speaking?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, sorry. Len should go before me, and we have a PowerPoint show we have submitted. Should I share the screen, or do you have it there?
I have a PowerPoint that was provided.
Did we lose Len again, or?
Oh, he appears to be here.
I see his name, but no picture.
Yeah.
Well, Ive, since you're here, you can use your time, and then Len could go after you if he's able to get back into the meeting.
Yeah. Can I?
Office.
Yeah, he says you do want to speak. Can you go to some other slides there? Next one. Next. Okay, so, my name is Eva Haugland from Shades of Green, and we are representing the Conagers. So their main concern of the view is the bedroom windows that are on the right picture, and also this also show from the driveway. Next. This is from the south lawn that they use for entertaining, and also an image of the house at dusk.
Sorry about that.
So, yeah. Okay, next. This is taken from the bedroom over to the flag that shows the second story. Next. This is kind of the problem areas are the main problem areas. It's the red, which is the bedroom window, and the primary, the southern lawn. Then the second areas are from the driveway and from the pool cabana and a little bit extra. Next. This is kind of a view from the southern lawn of the new second story. Next. This
This
is
call
the,
is being recorded.
uh,
If you do not wish to be recorded,
this is
please
the
disconnect at this time.
suggestion that is done by the Mosafarians that Brad went over. So yeah, so we can. So the 15-gallon plants are only going to be 3 to 5 foot tall going in. So that's an issue there. Let's go to next. This is what we would like to add an evergreen magnolia, a 48-inch box tree right at the corner of the second story to kind of help that bedroom view. We would like 36-inch box plants, Japanese blueberry or protocarpus along the southwest corner. And we would like also 36-inch box plants behind ADU and the rest of the southern property line. And we would like, to have those planted before construction start in areas where that is possible. Next.
Okay, so it's been 3 minutes now, so you'll need
Oh,
to wrap up your
Okay,
time.
yeah, just to kind of show the section and relationship between the two. Next. And we would also like that there be some kind of a solid screen on the west side of the building, the terrace there, not just planting. So that could be wood or metal or whatever. Next. Yeah, that just show a 36-inch box. So basically to get the instant screening and not having to wait like 5 years or more to get the effect. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ive. If your colleague Ken is back now, he can make his comments. Otherwise, we will. Actually, is there anyone else in the public who would like to make a comment at this point?
I see a raised hand for a phone number ending in 7988.
Yes.
Hello, Len Ripcon here.
Oh, he made it.
Hello, Len. We can hear you.
Okay, good. I'm getting back and I'm frustrated because I signed up early and I wasn't allowed to get back into the program, and now I'm on a phone and it's echoing. So, we'll start here. Good evening, members of the ADR group. My name is Len Ripkine with Ripkine Law Group and Mediation. And we represent the Conifers of 3 Upper Ames. And you've already heard from Eva Haugland. And I just wanted to make sure that you're clear that there was an effort for outreach between the parties and the landscape architects since the last ADR meeting on March 10. Unfortunately, Joni and Lionel couldn't be here tonight because they were on a pre-planned trip out of the country. And they wish to extend the desire to support their neighbor's project if reasonable privacy conditions can be formulated. First slide, please, Matthew. It's the Google photo.
Just give
Is
me
that up? I can't see now.
Yep, give me a second and I'll set it back up for you. Okay, it's ready.
Thank you. So this is a Google Earth photo of the Mosafarian and Conacher properties. And you can see the lot boundaries are generally outlined in red. And you'll note the Conacher parcel surrounds the Mosafarian parcel on the west and the south. And you'll note in this picture a number of large and magnificent heritage trees on the Conacher parcel, but there's few large screening trees on the Mosafarian side, except on the northeast corner near Shady Lane. The point is the project with its new second story will create privacy impacts on the Conacher property that need to be addressed that you just heard Eva address. Second slide, please. Let me know when it's up, Matthew.
It's up.
Thank you. So regarding outreach, there was one meeting between the landscape architects. And then additional meetings were requested, but unfortunately for the Mosafarians weren't receptive to that. And we've heard tonight, we appreciate that it seems that there's additional changes, but they were hearing about them for the first time tonight. So I think it was hard for Eva to respond. Next slide, please.
Third slide.
Thank you. And so I did submit a letter to the group dated April 14, and I hope everybody on the ADR group had a chance to review. In summary fashion, the Conachers oppose the current project plans because mandatory findings can't be made under Ross Municipal Code section 18.41.100. And that's the focus of tonight's hearing, we hope. And I've highlighted in the slide the subsections they think that would be difficult to make findings, subparts A, C, D, J, and M. And then lastly, as the group recalls, I made some comments about the ADU that's in the south east corner. And I certainly understand that the ADR group thinks that it can't make comments about the location of the
Len,
ADU because
you're gonna need to wrap it up pretty quick, Len.
Sure, I'll make 10 more seconds and I'll be done. So the point about the ADUs simply is that you get a pass from zoning constraints if the ADU is actually for housing. This ADU is not for housing. It's labeled New Pill Pavilion or Pool Cabana on the applicant's own plans. It's not for housing and therefore shouldn't be given a pass to be wholly located in a rear yard setback. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Len. Okay, is there anyone else from the public who would like to comment on this project?
There are two hands raised for Darius Mosafarian and for a phone number ending in 7988.
Okay.
I'm happy to go first. This is Darius, and I just wanted to respond to Eva and Len's commentary. And as part of that, Matthew, it would be helpful if you could kindly pull up the pictures that we've taken and presented to the ADR.
Okay.
So these are not visual or illustrative drawings. These are actual photos taken at one-time zoom that show the privacy that does exist. We are unable to put additional privacy screening on a tennis court. So the aerial photos that were shown are shown like that for a reason. There's a hard court there. And we're unable to put additional screening. We're working with the dirt that we have. That's the first thing. The second thing is, we do look at Len's letter, and we saw the various commentary on the variances, and we decided to eliminate all those variances. We took the ADR's commentary seriously. We went through the YouTube videos to listen to member-specific commentary, and we feel that we constructively addressed the concerns, and we hope that this is enough to get us unanimous support. Number three, we did want to provide additional commentary around the fencing on Shady Lane. We do have existing solid fencing there. We did want to request to retain that solid fencing. only because of headlights and noise. We're at a busy intersection, two-way stops. And so there's constant braking and acceleration there. I just wanted to provide that additional color in our 3 minutes.
Thank you, Darius. And Matthew, did you say there was one other, or sorry, are you finished, Darius?
Yes, thank you, Mark.
Great. Matthew, did you say there was one other person with their hand up from a phone number?
Yes, phone number ending in 7988. They are muted. If they would like to unmute and provide a comment. Going once, going twice. Okay, I'm lowering the hand.
Okay. Thank you for your public comments. I will now bring it back to the ADR for discussion. As the other members of the ADR were here the first time, I would like them to go first and comment on the project prior to me doing so.
Would you like, would you like a final comment or is this just?
Yeah, you can make your
section
final
for
comments. Since
Question.
everyone's had a chance to ask questions and listen to the comments.
Are there any questions out there before we get into the final comments on this?
No, not for me.
No.
Okay, well, I will start it off then. I think it's beautifully designed. I think they have addressed all of the concerns that we talked about, and they've done it in a very sensitive manner. And I think that the privacy concerns of their neighbors are being very well addressed. I don't really even think they need to do so many gestures of giant trees and giant screening. There is so much separation between these properties. I think they are basically asking for exactly what their neighbors to the right have. And I think their gesture of moving it out of the setbacks and addressing some of the issues that we identified last month are very well appreciated. And we can't really comment on the ADU, but the space that the pool equipment occupies in that ADU is very small. And actually, if you were to put pool equipment anywhere, the smartest place to put it would be on a busy street because it's noisy. It's down at the corner where not many people are going to hear it. It's not where you're holding a party. So I'm in full support of this. And I had been very, very pro having an open fence around the property. And when I walked it today, there are special findings for being on Shady Lane. It's their pool, it's their private area. I think they qualify for a solid fence on Shady Lane. Maybe it can turn the corner and become a little bit more open, but I support the project as shown and appreciate a very nice design. So there you have it.
Thank you, Joey. Who would like to go next?
I'm happy to, Mark.
Thanks, Steve.
This is Steven. I agree with Joey, and I can support it as presented tonight.
Thanks. Mark or Laura?
Yeah, I think I can jump in. I concur with the previous ADR members. I can support the project. I think that we do want to clarify something that Mark has brought up, Chairman Mark has brought up on a number of occasions in past projects. And I just want to state it because it might help clarify the idea of privacy. I think we think about views often in relationship to privacy or sight lines into someone else's home. I think that the proposal that we have here doesn't do either of those, right? The idea of seeing a building in your vantage point in some way, shape, or form does not make a negative privacy impact. I think the design is aware of that, and they've located the windows in the appropriate locations. I don't think it'll become a lantern effect. So I want to compliment the design team on that. I think they have respected the privacy of 3 Ames. So there is a difference between seeing buildings in your in your view versus a privacy impact. So I concur with Joey also on, I can support the fence along Shady Lane. I would, this is a note, I think in future planning issues, we'd like to see that fence taped off because it's not actually going back in the same location, just so that we can get a visual understanding that it's much closer to Shady Lane than it is today. But I think I can support its location, and the screening that you guys are proposing there is adequate. I think my one design comment would be, I think it might be a little awkward how that wood wall on the side that faces 3 Ames turns the corner, because it's still stucco on the front facade. So that detail might be, from a 3D perspective, a little awkward as that material changes. I don't think you need that material on the bottom as well, on the lower level. But that's really just I'd be interested to see how you guys deal with that turning of the corner from one material to another. But I appreciate the effort putting that wood on the second level, because I think that will nullify any brightness coming from through the screening. So I can fully support it as designed. And I think it's important to mention, yes, I support the pool equipment being in the location with the proposed ADU, because I do agree with Joey, it's in a good spot in relationship to the entire project.
Thanks, Mark. And Laura?
Yeah, I agree. I can support the project. I appreciate the effort that was made to address all of the items we discussed last month, to get rid of all the variances. The pool equipment location within the ADU is fine with me. And I think Joey already kind of said the few other things that I was going to touch on. So yeah, I'm supportive.
Great, thank you. So before I get to my overall comments, I'd just like to address some of the neighbor concerns. First of all, with the ADU, as anybody who's read the statutes from the state realizes, it doesn't matter what something might be called on someone's personal architectural plan. If something fits all of the definitions of an ADU, it is in effect an ADU. Secondly, the Conagers have an absolutely beautiful home. It was designed very nice, and I can see from the pictures that, and from walking by it, they have a huge amount of glass, which is great for their views, and it's a lovely home. But to suggest that because they have glass facing a certain direction, that should influence the property rights of the neighbors, I do not think is an appropriate way to look at anything. Otherwise, people wouldn't be able to build anything around a glass home. And third, with the landscaping, from looking at it from the top of the garage or the tennis court, if this was a complete dirt lot and the ADR was requiring landscaping, we would require less than is currently there, because it's quite thick and quite tall already day one. And I concur with everything the rest of the ADR has said. I think the project should be approved by the town council. So thank you, everybody, for your time and comments. And now we will move on to the next project, which is 5 Ames Avenue, the Swire residence. And I will let Matthew start that off.
Thank you, Chair Krushnit. Just starting my presentation. So item 4B is the Swire residence at 5 Ames Avenue. And the property is an irregularly shaped lot. It does meet the 1 acre minimum lot size, but it does have an irregular shape. It also has a significant slope that does not qualify it as a hillside lot, but it is substantial. The property contains an existing single family home in the middle of the lot and a detached garage with a 2nd story pool house. And the lot currently has non-conforming floor area. And
601 1064. 601.
Pardon me. So the project plan is involving renovation of the existing main residence, also renovation of the existing garage and pool house, and construction of a 3rd structure, which would contain an accessory dwelling unit on the ground floor and an open air cabana at the upper floor. Oh, and I would mention that all of these structures comply with the minimum setbacks on the property. The front elevation would go from the existing elevation that you see on the bottom to the proposed elevation on the top. So we see that there'd be change in materials, windows, doors, eave lines. The main primary roof form would not change, but the pool house and garage roof form would change to a flat roof. And the third structure would be located in this location here. So again, this is the front elevation. At the side elevation, we see the irrigated pool house and garage in this location, and the accessory dwelling unit with open air cabana above in this location. The open air cabana does not have walls. It has essentially 2 fireplaces at either end that would not really qualify as walls or screening. So it's considered an open story that does not count as floor area. And there's also proposal for storage spaces, basement level storage spaces in various locations on the property. And we see those section drawings here. So the permits required include design review for various aspects of the project, demolition permit to change the existing exterior. Non-conformity permit would allow for existing non-conforming floor area to be relocated, reconstructed, and altered on the property without increasing the actual amount of non-conforming floor area. So the only increase to floor area would be through the ministerial ADU process, and the ADU itself would be subject to ministerial permit. The notice was a 300-foot notice consistent with the code. Owners at 2 Ames and 6 Ames Avenue have objected, citing concerns about potential privacy and visual impacts of the project. And in summary, staff recommends that the ADR group allow for the public comments and discuss the merits of the project and provide the town council with a formal recommendation on the merits of design review. This concludes my brief presentation. The architect is John Catton of Catton Design, and he will likely want to present further information. I can present the project plans as well, and that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Mr. Catton?
Yeah, it's Ken Catton. Good evening, ADR. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So this project's been very interesting just because the initial drivers, and Matthew, you mind going to the next page? So it's an unusual, interesting site because it's a corner lot, and it's the existing buildings are built uphill, and they're surrounded by all these trees. So it sort of sits sort of within its own world. It was built in the 60s, the exterior has really not been improved upon, and it's got a lot of issues that the owner, the Swires, are very interested in updating the look of the property, and most importantly, increasing the sort of the functional aspects of the pool house and the activities around the pool that they're already that already exist there. So the existing pool house, as you see below in the middle, is the existing room, the existing deck that and there's no change of the use there. The problem is it's got a low 8-foot ceiling, and it's sort of chopped up into little rooms, and it really doesn't connect very well with the pool itself. So the idea was to get a larger room so that it could perform more like a recreation room and really open up to the pool on the pool side. So we raised the ceiling to 11 feet, and it's basically one large room with some accessory bathrooms and stuff, with big sliding panels that open up on the pool side that pocket and disappear. So it's this very light and airy indoor, outdoor simple space with a higher ceiling and a little 2-foot parapet above to hide solar panels. And then to create the shadows, we've extending a 6-foot deck and roof canopy out over the garage. So we get lots of shadows, and then there's the glass that is, we've added to address some of the 2 Ames comments. We've added some louvered panels there to help with privacy. But in general, we're working off the footprint of the existing pool house and the sort of the envelope, but just trying to make it more functional and make it a more active, exciting, honestly, recreation room. And then the cabana is basically, it's all air, except it's got a sort of a floating plane above it where the ceiling covers activities that are all there now. If you've walked out there, it's where they barbecue, there's outdoor dining, and there's a seating and a fire pit, and it was just trying to modernize it and make it more functional. So they can have shade when they need it, and there's the heaters in the ceiling when they need it in the evening to sort of stretch the seasons. So, and it's all the same uses that are currently going on there. Additionally, there's a hot tub in that area that's just going to get moved a few feet away, all existing. And then, yeah, so you can see the existing plan. You want to go back one, Matthew? Thanks. So that elevated deck to the south is currently where the cabana is going, and all these activities take place there now. You can see the existing hot tub, which is actually going to move a little further in towards the pool. And there's below that is where we're tucking the ADU on the downhill side. And along with the construction, we're adding some basement storage down at the lower ADU level. It's buried up into the ground, so they just have some storage places for their pool furniture and all that kind of stuff. So the main house, sorry, could you go back to A 1.0 real quick, or that's it. So the main house, so the challenge is, so we have this sort of very simple, clean pool house, and we want to help the main house relate to it without, we're really not doing any work to the main house except on the exterior. So we've removed, when you're out there, you really, it's hard to find the front door because it's got this existing suspended porch that wraps around the entire house. So it's kind of already hard to find the front door. So we're removing the deck over the front door and redoing that facade to give it a little more elegant scale. And the idea is to sort of replace the railings and update all the railings to match the pool house, and to take the existing roof porch that slopes and replace it just from the exterior wall out with something that matches the horizontal flat roof, to create, again, these lots of shadows on the wall. The house itself is kind of just a box shape, and the idea is it's an unusual house in that it's seen almost entirely from below. So the goal, and there's a lot of solar panels up on the existing roof, and I think if you go out there and look at the story poles, the idea is that this new extended flat porch roof really blocks your view of the pitched roof beyond. So while it's still useful because it's holding all the solar panels, it's basically, the reality is that it sort of changes the look of the house into more of the main house as a flat roof. Additionally, all the existing materials, which is, you know, painted over the years, weathered wood, and the slump block veneer, which has got lots of cracks. And basically the idea is just to skim that off and just replace it with just a simple smooth plaster. And just the rest of the palette is just sort of natural Ipe colored wood, and just trying to keep it very simple. This is pretty much the view that's ever seen from the public. So I think I'll just pause here and wait to see what the interest is and the questions.
Thank you, Ken. ADR members, do any of you have any questions for Ken?
I do.
Oh, go ahead.
Could you explain a little bit more the roof line of the main house? It's not changing, but you are going to accentuate that fascia so that it kind of matches the new building. I'm not 100% sure of what's going on there. If you could explain.
So Matthew, could you go to
A 3.2.
3.2?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so here's the view from the pool side. And Joey, you can see up the upper left, the main house. And so what we're doing is we're keeping the deck that is there, but we're removing the sloped roof from the porch, and we're adding this flat, a new flat roof that wraps around the porch.
Okay, okay.
And that relates to the canopy you see at the pool house right behind the pool, which has got all the sliding panels that pocket, which then relates to the cabana, which has that sort of same floating roof at the same same detail, same dimension. So it's
okay, got it. So you still have that sloped roof, but from the lower viewpoint down on Ames, you've made that sort of flat section that relates more to the other buildings. So when you see it from down on Ames, it looks like more of a modern structure with this flat fascia that mimics the other new buildings.
correct.
Okay, got it.
And it's so it's a way of tying the house into the new buildings, updating the look of the main house. And again, because you're always sort of looking up at the main house from below, it really blocks the view of the roof, the existing roof.
Yeah, got it. Okay, thank you.
I have one related question. So I see that it's extending, that flat roof is extending 9 feet, wrapping around the house. Could you tell me how much higher that flat roof is from where the roof was ending before? It's come up like a few feet or something?
Well, yeah, the top.
Is it true that the roof kind of ends right there, Ken?
Yeah, it's the high point is this where it intersects. It's exactly the same. So.
But this extension is right.
Oh, the extension is, no, it extends a couple feet beyond the deck, but it looks like it's a couple feet, maybe 2.5 feet.
If you see the main elevation, it looks like it goes up a few feet. Sorry, I don't know what sheet number that is. Right, like unless you're changing the windows and doors on that facade, I can see that the roof line, the lower part where that flat roof is a bit higher than where the roof is ending in the existing, right?
It at the eave, that's correct.
Yeah, so I guess I'm just wondering, what's that dimension?
Yeah, you can see it in relationship to those chimneys as well, on the lower drawing versus the upper drawing.
Looks like it's about 3 feet.
Yeah, it's within 2 to
eyeballing
3
it.
feet. I'll have to dig up the drawing to give you the exact number. It's not more than 3 feet.
Laura, did you have any more questions?
I guess just if you could explain the reason for bringing that line up. I understand the idea is concealing the solar panels. It just increases the like bulk and mass of the building.
Well, the first part is the most important reason. We're trying to get rid of the bulk of the roof behind it by doing just this very thin floating plane. And the only thing I would offer is that it's creating all these shadows that create these layers on the facade that I think will, between the porches and everything, will help soften the facade. If we lower it down to the existing, then you're just going to start seeing the bulk of the existing roof again.
From your,
when you're out there looking at the story poles, you can sort of sense that.
yeah, in looking at your picture, the lowest one on this page, it looks like standing on the street, you don't see the roof at all, just because of the angle.
Yeah, this picture looks that way. I mean, if you go out there and stand looking at it, you can see some of it, but it's not that big of a deal. But you can, as you get closer to the house, we're still trying to keep this sort of illusion that it's more of a flat roof on the main house, even as you get up closer to it, like in the pool side.
All right, Stephen, do you have, or Mark, do either one of you have any questions for Ken?
I do have a question, Ken. I'm sorry if this is somewhere that I didn't see, but I can't understand how the setbacks relate to the open air roof cabana thing. I see it on the existing site plan, but not the proposed. There. So the roof line is the dotted rectangle. Is that true, or is that a different line there? This line here, is that the end of the roof line of the cabana, or is it actually back here?
Well, there's if we go to a 2.2, Matthew.
I don't see the setbacks here, but
yeah, the setbacks are shown on the other drawing. So the setback is you see the balcony. So there's the brown area. There's the brown area, and then there's to the left, there's a line which is basically where the roof edge is.
The left is here. Yeah, I'm wondering where this boundary is.
Yeah, right where your red line is exactly where the roof extends to.
So is the roof beyond this setback line, I guess, is what I'm simply trying to understand.
Yeah, so the stair that's to the left, go to the very lower extent of that. That's where the roof is. There's a little faint line there right now. Basically where the bottom of the new spa.
Okay,
But there's no, so that's an eave. There's no
no column there.
There's no column in that space.
That's the line there.
Yeah, so there's a dimension to the column.
Yep.
On this drawing.
Column is there. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the
it extends beyond. I got it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
The rest is just an eave.
So you're basically using the second story of the ADU to be the cabana, right?
Well, it's the existing pool deck level. Yeah. So it sits above the ADU.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. But the fact, an ADU can be encroaching into the setbacks, and you're there's a structure that you're building already, and you're putting on top of that a cabana for your pool.
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, Ken, would you be able to speak just a little bit about the proposed fencing in the front, and I noticed in those elevations you had sort of a yellow highlighted railing. I wasn't sure what that was indicating, and maybe just highlight where the fences are new on the property, because I think the front has a new fencing and series of gates as well, right?
Yeah, well, I apologize. That'll be part of Brad's, if Brad's with us, that'll be,
Oh, okay. How about the elevation with those yellow sort of highlighted railings? Can you speak
oh, I
to
think
those?
that's just, was a hedge. Is that, I don't know, are you talking about, Matthew, can you go back to?
The A21.
Yeah, it was just the front elevation drawing.
Yeah, like 0.1 or,
Yeah, that. You
yeah,
notice
those are just diagrammatic hedges. They're not
Okay, thank you.
fences. So this is a sort of cut at the driveway line, not out at the street.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
But Brad does have new fences and gates proposed.
And Matthew mentioned that there's a bunch of storage that doesn't count as FAR because it's slightly less or significantly less than the, I think it's 7-foot height limit that it needs to count. Approximately how many square feet is the new storage, specifically the part that doesn't count as FAR? Approximately how many square feet?
It is. I think it's about 550 square feet.
Okay, thanks.
And it's essentially almost entirely underground, like concrete boxes under the dirt, other than the door to get into it.
Would you mind to just walk us through those spaces in the plan?
Matthew, can we go to 2.0, please? So the existing garage, you can see to the right is the one storage piece, which is completely underneath the whole pool deck. And then at the top above the ADU is the other, which is again, the pool deck runs over the top of that. And if Matthew, we go to that 3.2A. I guess I could have just gone to this one. I forgot I had the key plan. So you can see the sections here. The one above is the one at the edge of the garage, which is below the pool house and under the dirt of the pool deck level. And the lower one is at the under the cabana, which has its, the only place it daylights really is where, so we can get the door in, so we can, and you can see the natural grade dashed on the lower right.
And then to the left of the garage, those two storage spaces are not part of this non-FAR?
Those are existing that we're going to lower the ceilings to make them unusable, uninhabitable.
Yeah, I guess, so maybe Mark had asked about what are the new spaces with the low ceiling? I guess I'm just curious, what are all of the spaces where you're lowering the ceiling to remove the FAR?
In this plan, it's just the two to the left of the garage.
And so the one that's just behind the bed in the ADU, at the head of the bed, you see that room there, that basement storage unit?
Yes.
That's included in your 550?
Yeah, so that's the sections on the lower right, A and B. You can see it written in red there.
Okay, it's very small on my screen. Okay. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions before we open it up? Oh, sorry, and is Brad also going to be making a presentation?
I thought he was going to be here. Did he?
I'm
did he go?
here.
There he is. Okay.
Okay, well, sorry, first of all, does anyone have any last questions for Ken before we move on to Brad's presentation?
I do, sorry.
No. please.
The spa, the existing spa was in a setback. And you said you're moving it. Are you putting, so you're building a new spa in the setback zone?
Yes.
Okay, is there a reason why that would need a variance there?
So that would be subject to a non-conformity permit. It's
Okay.
the spa is being moved from essentially this location to essentially the same location. So that wouldn't be a new variance. It would be a non-conformity permit request, basically.
Thanks, Matthew. Okay, we will now move on to Brad for his quick presentation, and then we'll open it up to the public.
Matthew, can you bring up the landscape plan? I'm not sure. I can't remember which number it is. I think it's an L. That's existing conditions. That's the survey. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So much of the landscape is keeping the basics of what is there now. The patios are being replaced with a permeable stone. The pool's existing to remain. The driveway's existing to remain. We are adding auto gates and fencing, and there's a detail of those on, I believe, the next sheet. And so they're open fencing, and the auto gates are horizontal tubular steel. So it is open wire style fencing that goes around the property. There's existing fencing along Ames, but it's old chain link and it's terrible. So we are replacing that with the hog wire style open wire fencing with privacy screening. Can you go back to the next sheet? We are proposing an auto court at the front door just to give the front door a little bit of emphasis. So we're expanding that drive area right at the entry steps, just expanding it by 4 feet or so. So there's a little bit more room to park and open doors to cars. The existing turf area, we're adding a fire pit with some large slab pavers. And then we're doing minimal planting. You know, there's a lot of mature plants on site that we're aiming to keep. And the bulk of this is just kind of recreating what's there, but similar with the house, we're trying to bring it into a little more or a lot more contemporary, get it out of the 60s, 70s look and bring it into today's more contemporary landscape approach. I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Does anyone have any questions for Brad?
Could you tell us more about the bioretention that you're planning to add?
That may be civil. Ken, is there, go to the, I don't know if the civil's here. It's tree removal. Glen Dirth is a civil.
Yeah, it's at the end.
I don't think Glenn is here.
He's not.
There's an open area down between the ADU cabana and Ames. Basically a large open flat space with a lot of mature oak and bay. And we're just leaving that as is. It's quite nice. We're not trying to, improve it. And that's where Glenn is running the bioretention. He's running it into that space. And then he's also running it over into the area you can see on the plan. It's over by the north side driveway entrance. And I believe he has a bioretention planter also adjacent to the lawn. He's really done a lot of bioretention on this now I look at it. Because we are adding some impervious surface on the ADU roof and some expansion. I'm sure that he did, yeah, there's the calculations for it. We did try to take up some of that by doing the permeable pavers at the auto court. That was part of the goal of those pavers, was to add impervious or add pervious surface.
Thanks, Brad. Any other questions for Brad? Okay, thanks, Brad. I'll now open it up to the public, and anybody from the public that wants to comment, this is your turn before I bring it back to the ADR. We've received a couple emails and we've read through those. Matthew, does anyone have their hand up in the audience?
So I don't know how to put my hand up.
Oh, you're on, Sam.
Oh, okay.
You're live.
Sorry about that. And Sam Livermore, 2 Ames. I'm the part of these commentaries on both these projects here. First of all, I just want to thank the Swires very much. They reached out very kindly. Ken has been responsive. They've listened to our concerns. They're trying to address them. And so I commend them for that. But I also point out that the questions that the members of the committee have asked are spot on. The issue is not what does this thing look like when viewed horizontally. The question is, what does it look like from where you stand? And unfortunately, because of the way the house and the garage/pool house are situated up the hill, the impacts visually from 2, 4, and 6 Ames looking up the hill is very different than when you look at it horizontally. And this, for example, this roof extension or the eave raising, which Ken, I understand what you're doing architecturally, but from downhill, it basically looks like it's big wings sticking out there, and it extends the profile, extends the mass. So and you end up looking at the bottom of the eaves from where we stand, which again is, I take Mark's comment earlier, which is not a privacy impact of what we look at, but it does impact us when we feel that there are people able to look into our backyard and our bedroom, which basically is impactful on us. And so what we're hoping to do, and what I think that the Swires have tried to do, is consider our concerns. We did raise the question about the height over the pool house. And I think, Ken, you have reduced the height by a couple of feet from what it's originally proposed being. But I guess we'd still ask why it can't go down another foot. I don't know why you need 11-foot ceilings in your pool house and you couldn't get by with 10. But from our point of view, again, we're looking up at more mass, more height, more width than we were before, if this plan goes forward. And even though it may be more modern, more contemporary, whatever you want to call it, from our point of view, it's just more massive. And that therefore impacts both our sight lines and our sense of privacy, because our bedroom looks right up there. When you look at the pool house, there are 6 tall windows on the east facade above the garage. And even though they're kindly going to put screens over those, now that I understand the purpose of this is to relate more to the pool, I don't even know why they need to have 6 windows on our side, which apparently aren't going to be used and covered by screening, as opposed to having the focus back on the pool onto the west side, which is what this is supposed to be. So again, from our point of view, we understand the desire to be contemporary, but if that creates more bulk and mass and it impacts the neighbors adversely, either in terms of our visual concerns about privacy, because when someone is in that pool house, even now there's a single window in that wall. When someone's in there, I think someone was living there for a while and they have lights on at night and they have a TV on at night, we see it right out of our bedroom window. And we try very hard to keep our pittosporum hedge along our property line to maintain our privacy, but especially in the wintertime when leaves are a little bit thinner, it's very hard to achieve that effect. So mitigating that would be great by either reducing the windows, the screening is a mitigation, but lowering the height also would help us tremendously. I think those of you who've been out there, you can see what it looks like from the street level, or you're welcome into our backyard to see what the story poles look like in the lines. I feel badly about this because I believe generally the property owners should be able to do what they want. But since we were asked to comment, the impact is from us that it looks bigger, higher, wider, more massive. And so mitigating that as best we can by reducing some of those architectural features would be terrific. We plan to do as much landscaping as we can on our property. But you can only do so much when the house across the street is 15, 20 feet higher than you looking down into your backyard. So landscaping doesn't do the whole thing. We don't have all the fancy PowerPoints and so forth that you were looking at from One Ames perspective, but all the arguments that the Conachers were raising there certainly are what we could raise in spades, given the fact that this is a building that looks sort of right into our backyard and pool area, and specifically right into our master bedroom. And I guess whatever we can persuade the design review group or the Swires to do to mitigate these things would be appreciated. I'd also just point out that on this eave raised line on the main house, that even though I understand the idea of making it flat and tying into the pool house and all that sort of stuff, it actually is going wider. So the facade, from our point of view, if you add up the addition to the left of the pool house now and these wings on the house that are broader eave line, it just looks like a big, massive structure on the hill above us, looking down on all our properties. I think I tried to articulate all this in my comment letters, which you've seen. And again, I really want to commend the Swires for reaching out to us. But since we're having this discussion and you're trying to optimize the best designs for Ross and the Ross community, I just thought we felt compelled to raise these things at this time. And I'm happy to address any more concerns that I can if people have questions about what I wrote. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. We appreciate your emails to us and your commentary. Now we'll see if there's anyone else from the public who wants to use their time to comment on the project. Okay, in that case, I will bring it back to the ADR. Who would like to comment first?
Actually, would you like me to respond at all to Sam's, or?
No, usually there's no need to respond to the public, but thank you.
Okay.
Stephen, Mark, Laura, Joey. Okay, then I will go first. To me, I think that the project if you're standing on the pool deck, I think the project makes a lot of sense because it's nice to be enclosed by your own buildings, have the open cabana on the second story of the ADU, extend out more towards the street. But I think from all the different street angles, it's adding a lot of mass and bulk in a way that does not fit in with the topography that in Ross, we tend to encourage people to have their homes and or additions to homes fit in nicer with the topography, where a lot of this is standing up from the hills. And I think only a small part of this is due to the storage areas, but certain areas where there's that 6-foot storage area that's built into the hillside, then has a deck on top of it, so it expands things outward. And the screening, as Brad pointed out, from the upper Ames side is excellent screening. And it's very mature and very tall. But even now you see sort of the unattractive area below the pool deck. And although it will be more attractive when it's whatever dimensions ends up taking place in the new facade, you still see it. And I think you're going to see that much more of it, even without the second story of the cabana, which to me is sort of the most, I would say that and the eave overhangs are the two areas that really stick out to me as being very much more expansive and not fitting in with the topography than they need to be. In looking at the house from the street and driving by and coming up the driveway, I never thought that the existing roof was obtrusive or that you saw too much of it. And I think your photograph is very representative of what you see from the street. And the sight line sort of follows the roof line, so it seems unobtrusive, where with those new wings coming out and those poles, I think the roof is really going to draw the attention of the eye towards that particular architectural feature. So I would like to see the project not expand the bulk and mass so much. I'm not worried about privacy as far as when you have buildings that are 20 and 30 feet from the property line and they have windows facing out, no matter what direction they are. I'm always fine with that because everybody's house is going to have windows looking in all four directions. So those are my comments. Who would like to go next?
I'm happy to.
Stephen.
Sure. I think there are a lot of nice aspects to the project. I can appreciate the design of the ADU and how it's tucked into the hillside. I appreciate the design of the outdoor spaces. Well, I have a few concerns that I would like to see some revision if it comes back to us. And those are the most minor, but I think to me, I feel it's kind of an important one, is the compatibility between the original architecture and the new structure. And I think that there's language in the California state mandate about ADUs that they be compatible with the original structure, or at least there is in ours anyway, I think. But the window sizes in the ADU, I'd love to see them speak more to the window sizes in terms of rhythm to the main house, or see the main house change to match that of the new architecture. But I don't find that there's enough compatibility between the rhythm of the fenestration, the window sizes and pattern. And I understand that the eave blocks the view mostly of the roof line. I think that there are areas around the hills and so forth where you look down on this more. And I'm just kind of architecturally uncomfortable with the juxtaposition of this flat contemporary thing. And I'm all for contemporary architecture in certain situations, but I'm uncomfortable with it mashed onto the sloped roof. It just makes me uncomfortable. And I don't think it's really excellence of design. I understand that you're not renovating the house entirely and that you're trying to create compatibility. I think that there is a lot of compatibility with that gesture. I think it's a good way of trying to do it, but I think it's not wholly successful from my perspective. And I also agree with Mark that it creates too much mass on the site. I know that eaves or porch overhangs rather don't contribute to FAR as long as they be less than 10 feet in depth from the face of the building. I think that's a great rule because it encourages us to build covered porches, which I think are kind of a friendly architectural thing to institute or to encourage. But this is wrapping all the way around. And if it weren't sitting up in a position where that created kind of this perceived mass, it might be fine to do a wraparound porch around the whole thing. But I think that I agree with Mark that when you're walking around on Ames and Upper Ames, it's quite much. And I think that if I'd rather see those funds deployed to change the roof line entirely, and I don't know that the cost would be any different. And so I'd rather see something that's more compatible. So I think to sum up, greater compatibility architecturally. I think the eave is too strong. And I think that the cabana roof also is quite strong, as Mark pointed out, in relation to Upper Ames. I'm a little more comfortable with it maybe than he is, but I still think it feels pretty bulky. And I don't understand why it's extending as far as it is. Certainly if it's extending beyond the setbacks, maybe an eave is allowed to extend beyond the setbacks by 2 feet or 1 foot or whatever the rule is, but it seems unnecessarily large in that direction. But the primary concern that Mark pointed out is its relationship to Upper Ames, which I second that. That's all. Thanks.
Thanks, Stephen. Mark? Would you like to go next?
Sure. Yeah, I think I concur. I can't. I think the proposal at the main home is probably the area that I have the most concern. I think because of its, as Stephen mentioned, the situation that you're looking up at this exacerbates the bulk and mass. Obviously, extending a plane horizontally at a roof line is not typically what we characterize as mass, bulk and mass. But in this particular case, based upon where the public's view is, the majority of this home, that is a massive extension, right? Almost 9-10 feet out from the facade. I just am not seeing it work in that regard on the main home. I would concur that I think the cabana exacerbates that roof being 11 feet high. I think across the board from the pool house that can get dropped down 11 foot inside a pool house is again, bringing up the bulk and mass unnecessarily. And I would concur with the cabana. I think the extent by which that roof does go to the west, I think is across towards the spa end of the property is just excessive at this point. So I would recommend lowering that piece. I would bring that way back in. Again, all these horizontals, because you're seeing them from below, it's adding a lot of mass to this particular site, which I don't think is necessary to achieve what you're trying to achieve. I would say in regards to the fenestration on the pool house that faces across Ames, you know, I see that it's interesting when people generally build things and then they say they're going to cover them up with landscaping in some ways, or we're going to cover those windows with screens. I would encourage the applicant to reduce the fenestration on that side. I think because, again, this sits up on the hill, those are 3 pretty expansive sets of glass. I would recommend reducing that in addition to reducing the height, because again, as Stephen mentioned, the activity, you know, sort of that court that is made between the cabana, the pool house, and the main home is really where the activity is and where that transparency probably should be. It doesn't necessarily need to be out through the front facade. I think those are my main concerns. I just think that at the main home, that addition, while I appreciated, I think it was Ken's mention about articulating shade and shadow and whatnot, the home is actually kind of in deep shadow already based upon that extension of the current roof line. So I don't think you're getting much more depth of light, especially because you'll be extending that out so far that the entire home will be essentially in shadow almost all the time. So I'm not sure that I understand the visual and the stylistic change with that horizontal plane, but I don't think it's working in respect to the bulk and mass of the home. Yeah, so those are my comments.
Thanks, Mark. Laura, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I mean, I had the same concerns about the bulk and mass of the project cited up from the other homes surrounding it. And I think adding that flat, like raising those eaves, the flat roof around the porch, and then raising it 3+ feet, and then having it extend beyond the balcony to 9 feet, just really increases that bulk and mass from looking down below.
Yeah, and I just measured just so the bottom of the eave, the proposed is 1'8" above the bottom of the existing eave. And the existing porch roof extends 5 feet currently. So it's going up 1'8" and going from, as proposed, from 5 feet to 9 feet. So that's the data.
You were saying the bottom of the eave is 1'8" above the current eave bottom, correct?
Yes.
And then how thick is the proposed eave?
It's about 16 inches.
Okay, so about the top of it would be about 3 feet taller than the existing eave, which I think where we were. Okay.
Yeah, and I, frankly, it's part of the device was to avoid all the expense of tearing off the roof and making it just flat, which is certainly something that I can talk to the client about.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Sorry, and Laura, did you have more to say, Laura?
No, just, I mean, continuing with the bulk and mass, adding that cabana with the roof kind of continues making it feel more and more built up. I think the height, the interior clear height of the cabana was like 12 feet. So I guess it would just be a question of if there are ways we could kind of be more responsive to the neighbors and the site and just try to pull back a little bit. The one last thing I was just gonna question was if the pool house really needed an outward facing balcony, because it seems like that would look down into multiple homes. And based on the project we just reviewed, you know, it could be a big issue for people. So I just wanted to kind of question that item as well, if that was really necessary for the project.
Thanks, Laura.
Would you like me to respond to that now or wait until the end?
Actually, this is now just the ADR talking with no need or ability to respond. It's just the ADR giving their suggestions to the town council at this point.
Okay, well, I was just
Thanks.
going to point out that there's existing deck there now and and windows, and there's a nice view from there. So that's one of the reasons the windows are still there. And the point was to create shadows to break up the facade. So the projecting deck and the projecting roof are there to break up the scale of the wall.
Thank you. Wait, Joey?
Okay, so basically I kind of echo everything that everyone is saying in terms of, I think if you can just pull the whole design in a little bit, you know, just make it a little smaller, a little shorter, a little less grand and tall and big. I actually really liked the horizontal fascia and trying to make this more of a modern building. And I understand that you're almost trying to hide that sloped roof and get away with not replacing it and create in the main house what looked to be kind of a modern complement to the new structures you were building. However, I think in so doing that, you created a little bit more of a too big of a gesture. So I think you could still go ahead with that, the idea of a horizontal fascia, but just maybe kind of pull it in a little bit and lower it, do whatever you can do to make it not so big as seen from the street. I also don't think the garage structure has to be so high. I mean, that should be an ancillary structure. It could be tucked down. I think that the response of the neighbors is that it's such a big change. And there's no reason it has to be quite so high. I think the ADU is well cited. But then if you're using that location, which is allowed by the state to be in the setbacks, if you're using that to build a cabana on top of, then the cabana becomes a very transparent and light gesture that, yes, you've been allowed this non-conforming square footage within the setbacks, but then it doesn't have to be a two-story building or a two-story structure. So I think just in general, just take the ideas you have and pull them in a bit. One of my biggest concerns was that when you took the railings off of the front door to make it more of a gesture, that front door and the fenestration around it became a very big lantern effect from Ames. So maybe all that glass doesn't have to happen around the front door where it's just such this big bright lantern. Lastly, I thought it was actually, you know, I think we can all agree it's not the most attractive house. It really needs to be updated. I thought a lot of the railings and the idea of the design actually made the house more quiet, and it could be quite lovely. It was a great design. I think just everything needs to be pulled in a little bit. So those are my comments respectfully submitted.
Right. Thanks,
Hey,
Joey.
Mark, could I add one additional item that I kind of forgot? I apologize.
Please, and then I have one too.
Yeah, I think the other element when looking from Upper Ames that Joey sort of alluded to there is the that underground storage space extends that wall even further out, creating more mass on that hillside. I think while I appreciate storage, that seems to be somewhat unnecessary. I would prefer to see that eliminated. It cuts out a lot of, you've got that railing going across, you've got that wall. It's just, again, for storage, I would say that could be in the theme of what Joey described, pulling back, tightening it up, not being so grandiose, because every one of those moves increases that mass on the hillside. And knowing that that's fairly visible from the street, that facade becomes awfully long and awfully tall. And I would recommend just eliminating that underground bunkered storage altogether.
Yeah.
To reduce things even further. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I concur with your comments. And then one thing for Brad that I failed to mention was, I think his idea of the open fencing going around is absolutely great. The actual driveway gates, and maybe someone else could comment on this, the driveway gates seem very heavy to me in that drawing that Brad showed us. The open fencing everywhere else seems great and very typical of what he's done around the town. But the driveway gates themselves seemed quite heavy to me and not near as open as, there's no real privacy you're trying to protect on an uphill driveway.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So I'd like to see something just a little more open there. Okay, great. Well, so Matthew, you have all of our comments. I think everybody would like to see the project again with the vast majority or all of our comments incorporated. It looks like, so Ken, we're done with the project, but if you have another question or comment, feel free.
Just clarification from Mark, the storage, were you talking about the one that's downhill next to the ADU?
I believe it was
Yeah,
the
that's
one
right.
at the head of the bed, like if you were sleeping in that bed just behind where your head is.
So,
Yeah,
so
it's
that
actually
wall,
what
that wall would
what it
be there
is.
even if we don't have the storage. Because it's the downhill, it's what's there now. So the wall really wouldn't go away. It's just the door would go away.
Well, what's there now is hillside, right?
No, there's like a lattice wall there now.
Right, but the lattice wall could be removed. I mean, sometimes when people do projects, they actually pull things in and have less encroaching towards the setbacks. And just because something is there now when you're doing a project doesn't mean everything needs to exist. We don't need to take a current lattice wall and make it a solid concrete wall.
No, I mean, the pool deck goes to this point, so we'd have to retain at some point. So, and again, this will be all screened and you probably didn't even see it from the road, but I appreciate your comments. We'll go back and tighten it up.
Okay. Thank you, Ken. Okay, we will now move on to the next agenda item, which is 3 Willow Hill Road, the Fletcher residence. I will let Matthew do his presentation.
Thank you, Chair Krushnit. Item 4C is the Fletcher residence at 3 Willow Hill Road. The property is a very irregularly shaped lot. It is also substandard in terms of size. In a 5-acre district, it's about a ½ acre in a 5-acre district. So it is limited in terms of size. It also has a significant slope of 35%, which means it's a hillside lot and subject to all the hillside lot restrictions, including increased setbacks. The property contains an existing residence with non-conforming setbacks and building coverage. The project is at the rear of the property, which is in this location. The project would remove these existing rear decks at the 1st and 2nd stories and replace them and construct a new 1st story pool deck that would extend off the back of the property a little bit lower than the existing 1st story deck. And at the 2nd story, it would essentially infill the L of the house with a new 2nd story deck. In elevation view, we see the existing elevations here on the left, proposed on the right. And we can see that the upper story deck here would be removed and brought in, replaced with a new deck that would be in line with the building wall. We see here at the bottom that first story deck and screens would be removed, and a new lower projecting pool and deck would be constructed off the back of the building. Here's the other side view. Again, existing first and second story decks to be removed. And what would be visible from this side elevation would be the stairs that pop out at the corner and the projecting pool deck here, with the pool, of course, being sunken into this screen structure. The permits required include design review and hillside lot permit, both for grading and design review for impervious surface additions. And a variance is required for new pool and decks to encroach within the minimum required side and rear yard setbacks on a hillside lot. And that would include being 9 feet away from the closest property line at the rear property line. And also variance is required to allow for an increase to non-conforming building coverage in a district where the maximum is 10%. The existing property is at 13.7 and is proposed to go to 17.7. The project would, I should mention, the project would not result in an increase to impervious surface coverage, because there would be a driveway replacement that would result in new pavers. So the overall project would not actually result in new additional impervious coverage, even though the building coverage does increase through the project. The notice area was a 500-foot notice area for this hillside lot. There are owners objecting to the project, and those communications have been forwarded to the ADR group at 10 Madrona, 14 Madrona, and 16 Madrona, which are essentially across the street, across Madrona from the subject property. And owners in support include 40 Madrona and 4 Willow Hill Road. That concludes my presentation. Staff requests the ADR group allow comments and discuss the merits and provide a recommendation to the town council. The architect is Andrew Fisher of Andrew Fisher Architecture, and he may want to also present information and plans, which I can share. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, commissioners, for your time. I'm Andrew Fisher, and I've been working with Scott Fletcher, the client. This is our second kind of go around for a project at this property. We previously worked on another house for Scott and his family in Kentfield. So we're very familiar with each other, and I'm very familiar with this particular property and some of the challenges that it presents. And so maybe the best way to go about this is just talk about what some of the programmatic requirements were from Scott and his family, some of the problems and challenges that we've encountered, and then how we chose to go about solving those things. So I would say that the biggest programmatic challenge and desire for this property is getting good access to outdoor space and activity for the family and for kids, where the site, given its sort of the steepness of the site, there's really no direct access to the outdoors other than through the front door and through this rather kind of ad hoc, expansive deck that's off the main living level, which is at the highest point of the house. Getting down to, there's a flat area where we put up our story poles, which is kind of a flattened lawn area, artificially kind of built up. That area is over 3.5 stories below the top level, and really kind of presents itself as the only place to kind of get to the outdoors and have some ability to move around a little bit. So the desire here, I think, is to kind of replace or redistribute that outdoor deck space, because really I think that's one of the only solutions to this hillside house, is to actually artificially sort of build up areas for activity, but to displace the rather kind of handmade. If you've been out to that structure, it looks almost like a railroad trestle deck that is off the main living level. We're cutting that back significantly, putting a more kind of user-friendly and convenient stair to get down to a lower deck area, which is off the bedrooms below, and then further terrace you down to the pool deck, which would be built over the current rear yard space. So, I think that we, again, understand the challenges of the hillside. We're fighting the battle between getting good access from the house and dealing with the obviousness of masses and building structures on a hillside. So maybe the best thing to do, Matthew, if you don't mind, is go to our site plan A4.0. And it's awfully small. Hopefully you guys can see that better than I can on here. I have my drawings open though, but so this is kind of just an illustration that shows where the proposed pool and lower deck. This is a view of the upper deck, but the lower deck portion is below that, directly below that. The dashed lines that project out represent the existing decks. The one on the right, which is more of an octagonal shape, is the upper deck, which is going to be cut back. The lower shape is where currently there's an existing hot tub and a deck that's several feet above our proposed pool level. That is also going to be removed. And if we can go to, I think, and I know that if we go to the next, this slide is a kind of a good illustration. I think it also sort of kind of speaks to some of the challenges that we have, which Matthew pointed out. The site plan with the setbacks in the upper left-hand corner are the required setbacks for this property. And you can see that just that sort of area, the rear yard actually encroaches on the front yard setback. So there's a very narrow sliver of this site that would actually be buildable from the zoning aspect. And that area, coincidentally, is over this very steep, heavily wooded ravine, and not, I think, a practical place where one would want to build anything. So I think, again, in order to speak to the idea of getting access and usable space off of the main living level, or the main residence, getting it in closer proximity to the house and the activities of the house made the most sense. So I think maybe we can go to just speak to the floor plan, which was I think I'm going to start with the upper level, A 2.2. Thank you. This is the main living level off of the street. So the first project that we did with Scott and his family was to renovate the kitchen, and then we have new doors that sort of access that existing larger deck, of which we're pulling back and making that deck usable, but doesn't have as much weight on it for programmatic things like recreation. This is where our new stair would go down on the right-hand side. One of the goals too with this, and I think we identified this problem early on, was the impact that this current existing deck has, not so much on this level, but the level below, kind of casting this really dark and confusing structure around those bedrooms. So the idea here, not only was it to kind of create this lower activity space with the pool, but was really to enhance the experience on those lower levels. So by basically rebuilding this deck and cutting it back, if you go to the previous drawing, A 2.1, those sort of dark circles represent columns which would support the deck framing, which would be further cantilevered out to the edge of the what is the existing sunroom out there. So that's the deck, the edge of the deck above. So we're going to do that with steel columns, a steel beam, and kind of lighten the whole aspect of the deck structure. As you kind of come out of the lower floor or down those stairs, we have this, again, terrace benches that take you down another 5 feet from this level down to the pool deck. And then the reason for doing that, again, is to eliminate needs for guardrails and a lot of structure that would, kind of get in the way of connecting to these outdoor spaces. We situated the pool where it is, again, trying to maximize the use of this space out here for recreation. The pool itself is 13 feet wide. It's a little over 40 feet long. It has an integral spa with it. We're making this whole deck structure out of wood, Ipe wood decking that would go around. And then we're using a device where at the perimeter of the pool, we're lowering, again, terracing down another 30 inches to create this green edge to the pool. On the outside of that green edge is something that I think you've seen before this evening, but a hog wire fence structure that would act as a planter that we would train plants around the base of it and vines that grow up and use the hog wire mesh to create a green wall, basically. If we, let's see, go to the, elevations, I think a 3.0 in the section, you can kind of see the extent of which we're cutting back that upper deck. You can kind of see the terracing effect as you go down to the pool from the living levels. The north elevation illustrates that the stepped planter, the terrace planter with the hog wire on the outside of that. One thing that we are doing is also restoring the hillside, because it's sort of artificially leveled off there. We're restoring the hillside back up into that mesh. It is in a bit of a bowl, so the edges get a bit steeper as you move to the sides. Let's see here. And then, just the simplification of the deck structure here. I think that if you were to look at this drawing and then go maybe back up to the existing or demo plan on A1.3, I'm sure if you've been to the site, you would notice all of that kind of those elements there. So that we're trying to help out. So I think that that's mostly all the details I have. I know it's a complicated project. It's a complicated site. I'm sure it's going to generate a lot of questions. So maybe we can see if there's anything that I can help clarify as we kind of move through the comments.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, before I open it up to the public, are there any questions? There's an excellent explanation, Andrew. Any questions from ADR members for Andrew?
Yes, could you give me, I've seen it on the plans, but I just want to confirm the high and the low height across the span of the various elevations on the hillside of that retaining wall as it will be perceived from down below. So I saw a 14-foot retaining wall, or basically a structure that would top out at 14 feet above grade. Can you clarify that? I think there's a high and a low there, right?
Yeah, there is, and this elevation sort of illustrates. So at that middle section, which is where the middle area, or roughly the middle area where the section is taken, the lowest point that planter wall is 5'2". That line, I'll just say, illustrates everything above that would have this kind of level of transparency to it. But the corner on the right-hand side up to the pool deck height, which is that 135, is approximately 10 feet. If you go to that same point on the other side, it's higher than that. I don't have my drawing open now, but it is in that neighborhood of 12 to 14 feet, I would say, on that, at the pool edge. The retaining walls step down 30 inches. They also move out, away from the building and, against that topography. So it sort of follows those topo lines. So I would say for all intents and purposes, it's about the same height at the outer retaining wall or planter area. It's really a raised planter. It's not retaining. It's a structure. So.
Well, the retaining's behind that for the pool, right? And then the planter and the fences and the kind of the things that are creating the landscape are basically to conceal the retaining wall that's holding the pool, right?
Yeah, I think it's just nomenclature. I don't necessarily think it's a retaining wall.
Okay.
But anyway, but yeah, it's a wall that we're using to help mitigate maybe the edge of the pool, and also the requirement, if we didn't have that in front of there, there'd be a 42-inch high railing that goes around.
Yes. Yeah, got it. Okay.
Anyway, that's the purpose of it. Yep.
Thanks. Any other questions for Andrew?
I have a question, Mark. Andrew, in that same section, is that extension of the hog wire and its support system that rises above the planter retaining wall or the spillover area, is that required for any reason? Or are you just trying to screen visually at a diagonal line?
Well, it's not actually. We could, it's more, I've done this before. And I think it's the comfort level too of having kids and providing some guard rail. It's not necessary by code. I mean, if you get into the fine print of that, but I think from a practical reality, something needs to be there. But
it's not a vanishing edge pool. That's a solid coping on that side.
I'm sorry.
It's not a vanishing edge pool. That it's a coping.
No, it's not a vanishing edge pool.
That's a coping there, so someone could sit there and fall over.
That's right.
The code says if it's 3 feet or wider, you don't need the guardrail. But so if you could make it, I understand it meets code without it, but you feel like it's safer with it.
Yeah, I thought about some of those issues too, and the practicality of it. It's a bit of a, yeah, you're right. You're exactly right. So
okay, thank you.
I have a question. This was in Matthew's presentation, but I didn't quite catch it as he moved through. He was saying there's like a 10% maximum. I don't know if that was for building coverage or FAR, and the property, could someone just run me through those numbers, like what it was and what they're proposing?
Sure, I can do that. So there is a 10% maximum building coverage. And so that applies to building footprint and projections that are more than 18 inches above grade, including porches, decks, balconies, etc. So again, 10% is the maximum allowed in the district without a variance. The existing property is at 13.7, I believe, and the proposal is to add 4%. So it would be 17.7, I believe.
Thanks, Matthew. Any other questions from the ADR before I open it up to the public?
Pool equipment, I can't remember where that was located. Is it tucked underneath that? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we have a lot of space underneath those, in the section, those steps on the left-hand side. There's I think a drawing below this that level that shows that. There you go. Yeah. There's a room there that we would isolate the pool equipment in below a lower level office. Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
One more question. Can you go back over the setbacks? And there's a corner there that's non-conforming that's cutting into the setbacks. But I think if you were to adhere to the letter of the law, I know this hill very well, the setbacks don't make any sense. You would have actually nowhere to build. So the diagram to the right is kind of an amended setback that,
I think,
just go over that one more time. Thank you.
That's just where it's proposed. That's just the proposed.
Yeah,
Existing and proposed, basically, and I think we just extended those lines around the property, but yeah, this is a half-acre site zoned for 5 acres, so everything is kind of you move furniture into the house, you need a variance, it seems like, so. But anyway, that's the challenge, that's what we're confronted with. There's another drawing that I'd like to point out, if you don't mind. Before this, it's the kind of the assessor's map. Keep going, there you go. So the light gray area is our property. The darker gray area is this easement and no man's land that sort of surrounds 3 Willow Hill. It's, I think, owned, and Scott can speak to this, by the property number 4 Willow Hill, who's in support of the project. But effectively, I think when we approached this project, we sort of saw that area as an extension of this property, and, if you were to, if that were part of 3 Willow Hill Road, we would fit well within all of the setback requirements, at least for our proposed improvements. So it's a heavily wooded area, that darker gray area, except for where the road carves through. But anyway, I think it's kind of a good illustration of either some of the challenges, but also how we approach the project, or what our rationale was there. So.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay. Well, then I will open it up to the public for comments or questions. Was there anyone, Matthew, who has their hand up? I know we've received and read through the letters of several neighbors. Okay.
I think you're on mute, Matthew.
Thank you, Mark. Adrian has their hand up.
Hi, Matthew. This is Adrienne Liggett from 10 Madrona, and we oppose the project. I know that we're asking for a pool entirely within the required setback. This project doesn't seem like it's a hardship that requires a variance. I mean, I just don't see how a pool can get a variance within a 70-foot setback for this project. Additionally, it has a negative impact to our property and the downhill neighbors on Madrona. I know 4 Madrona was also logged on, but had to get off to take care of their child. It presents issues with privacy, specifically at my house. I'll be looking down into my very private courtyard and into my backyard. The acoustics on the hill are significant. Anytime I have several friends that live up on the hill, and anytime anybody's walking down the hill, you can hear everything that's said. So by extending this pool out, where it's a beautiful design, but there's going to be congregating and we're going to hear everything. And then I think most importantly is the stability of the hill. We're really concerned about 300 cubic yards being excavated from this hill and nearly 1,000 cubic yards brought in. We have had issues with the hill kind of sliding, trees are growing at a side. PG&E recently came out and did emergency removal of trees that are kind of starting to stand, that are leaning. If you go down Madrona right now, you can see X's on the trees. That's because they're leaning. It's, we are very concerned. And I think that, the Fishers had sent a letter saying that nobody down on Madrona or Lagunitas can see that property, which is not true. When you're walking down Madrona from Willow, you can look up and see that hill. So you can look up and see it, which is not as big of a concern. It's the privacy of them being able to look down by now being within a 9-foot setback. It just seems very egregious, and we would like to see the pool relocated to a different part of the parcel. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Adrian. Matthew, is there anyone else who has their hand up?
I see no other hands raised.
Okay, I will then bring it back to the ADR for our recommendations to the town council. Since Joey and I went first on the last 2 projects, is there someone who'd like to go first on this one?
I'll jump in. Yeah, it's a challenging site. I think that's relatively obvious. I'd like to say I appreciate the removal of the decks and the cleaning up of the general facade. If you've been to the site, as hopefully many of you have, it's a hodgepodge. It's a strange collection of decks at different elevations with different projections. I have to admit, I was quite nervous to be on the top deck at the edge. It scared the crap out of me. I applaud the attempt of pulling that upper deck back. I actually believe that in light of privacy and sound attenuation, that's going to be the biggest benefit, right? Moving that deck all the way, a significant way back into towards the home should help those elements on the site. It certainly mitigates the looming nature of that building up on the hillside, which I think is a concern. So those are the positives. I do step back and wonder if this is a site that warrants a pool. That sometimes we look at properties and we look at constraints with setbacks or with other topographic limitations. This might be one that might be just not appropriate for a pool. I concur with Andrew. I can't even recommend another spot on the site that would work better than this, right? You've located it in the most appropriate spot on the property, but I'm hesitant to endorse something that does increase such a mass on the hillside with the retaining walls. I appreciate the ability to kind of drop them down. I think from an architectural standpoint, you've done everything to mitigate what is potentially a site that just can't support a pool. I do have this a concern of that much mass, that much material, that much water above, homes below. I think that's just a practical concern that one should have given the stability of that hillside. So all in all, I like what's done with the architecture. I'm not sure I'm supportive of the fundamental request, which is to have the pool in the setback. And I don't think it's as much about the setback. I think what Andrew pointed out about that unusual shape lot in relationship to the easement, right? It is not that it's 9 feet away from the setback, but I think the topography, the lot coverage, those types of things were already in excess of what should be done on that particular lot. And I think increasing that by another 4%, I struggle to understand how we would find findings to allow that variance. So fundamentally, I like the design because I think it improves the home. I think the pool in its location is the only spot it could be, but I just don't think this lot supports a pool. That's kind of where my thoughts go on this. And I'm happy to hear my other colleagues on the ADR, with their opinions as well, but there you go.
Thanks, Mark. I'll make my comment brief because I agree 100% with what Mark just said. I think the house would look much better with a more organized deck structure, but it just does not seem like a lot that supports a pool in any way, especially when it's already 40% over what it should be at 14%, and increasing that even more to make it close to 80% over the lot coverage doesn't seem to make sense, especially when it's a pool, which is one of the noisier things you can put there.
I'll go next. Mark, if you're done.
Yep.
The reason I'd like to go next is I have a contrasting opinion about it, and I want to vocalize that before the last before Laura goes and Joey goes, in case they want to play off of any of this. I think that the lot is a little bit of victim of miszoning in that if it were zoned with 1 acre parcels, as I understand it, then there would be a 15% lot coverage, which is kind of close to. I also think the setbacks, I know the setbacks would be different, and I think that the setbacks are less of an issue because of the easement there. I couldn't support the project as designed, but I support very much the change to all the decks. And I think that I could support a swimming pool there if it was at something like a 15-foot setback, because that's where I feel the zoning is kind of correct. And if the pool were lowered by 4 feet or so, so that all of those walls kind of shrunk down into the earth, because I think that the topography, kind of the respect for topography doesn't fit with the design standards right now. But if it's sunk down by about 4 feet, I'm kind of guessing that I think that it would kind of fit into the topography. And then maybe if an endless edge is used on that trough, you wouldn't need the screening to go up that extra 30 inches or whatever it does. And so a combination of shrinking down 4 feet, taking the screening down from the extension of 30 inches to 0 would, I'm really uncomfortable with the 15-foot high wall from a kind of unnatural topography response situation. But I think if it were lowered a lot, that I could support it.
Thanks, Stephen.
So I'll go next. Full disclosure, I lived at 4 Willow Hill for almost 20 years. So I walked, and my very best friend lived at number 3. So I know that home well. And I walked up and down that road, and I, like designers do, I frequently imagined how I would redesign it. And Andrew, I think you've done a really great job with the decks and the reorganization of that. And even I thought the color today, I thought it's really looking a lot better. So I commend you on that. And similar to our house above, I always wondered, gosh, could we get a pool in? Could we do that? And with these hillside houses, it's very tough. I don't know if all of you know the history of that hill, but it was one big estate, and it was subdivided. And actually, I think number 3 might have been the carriage house. I'm not sure, but it was a huge estate, and then parcels were subdivided, and it's very oddly configured with that easement that belonged to number 4, which was our house. But anyway, I digress. What that easement does for number 3 is it really does create a buffer around that property, which would allow for maybe a little bit of leeway with setbacks. However, there's nothing we can do to make findings on going so far over building coverage for a pool. Going, 10% is allowed, you're going from 13.7 to 17.7. I do agree with Stephen, if you could figure out a way to make a pool, sink it down further, you have 14 to 12 foot retaining walls or fences that people down below are looking up at. It's also a very uncomfortable position for all those people on Madrona to have this pool looming over them with worries about flooding and earthquakes, etc. However, they all have pools, and there is such a thing called engineering, which if you did it properly, there's a pool above, I don't know what number it is, but the top house that used to be the Abramowitz's house, that has a pool. It's up on a hillside. I think it can be done with proper engineering, but there's something about this site where it just kind of doesn't fit. It's a lot that you're doing to shove a pool in there. And I think we don't have the findings for the pool, but I think the deck reorganization is quite good. Maybe you end up doing a nice jacuzzi on a lower deck. But I basically see what you're trying to do, and it's a tough site to do it on. And as designed, I would not be able to support it. I think, as in some prior projects tonight, it just needs to be less. I hope that makes sense.
Thanks, Joey. Laura?
Yeah, well, while I can understand the desire for more usable outdoor space and adding a pool for the family, I definitely have to take into account the topography of the site, and it's difficult to put aside the being 9 feet from the the property line and also the increase in building coverage from what's already non-conforming. And so I'd have to agree with most of the other ADR members that it just doesn't seem to be working right now, but perhaps scaled back, sunken down, like reduce that volume, because you can see it from, you know, all the neighbors. I kind of walked around and drove around all there, and I think it would have significant impact on all the neighbors below. So if there's a way to make it feel less looming, and, you know, like Joey said, there's engineering that can, you know, ensure that this will be properly supported. But yeah, right now, I don't think I could be able to give full support of the project.
I have one more comment I forgot to make. Do you mind if I?
No, please.
I'll just add this. So after all those years of trying to garden that hillside, it's north facing and it's under a lot of oaks and bays. And so if you think you're going to get something to grow, like, you know, vines and shrubs and things that will disguise that big retaining wall, it's very, very difficult for things to grow there. And I think you should know that when we have this beautiful landscape plan, it's like pulling teeth to get things to grow on that hillside, unless you remove all of the bays and thin out the oaks. So it's just a concern. It's just something you should know.
Thanks, Joey. And I can add one small thing based on what Laura said. I also went around the neighborhood a little bit. And when I was on the site looking down, it occurred to me like, oh, this is fine. This is very private. This won't affect anybody. And then when I walked along the street below, I did notice, I was very surprised at how much you actually saw the rear of the house and the decks from below. Because when I was up top, it felt like it was very hidden. But I was surprised from the houses below how much I did see the house up on the hill through the foliage. Okay.
And the existing decks really are not very attractive when you look from down below. So it would be a huge improvement to clean those up.
Agreed. Okay, Matthew, I think you have enough comments for this one. Thank you for your time, everyone. And now we will move on to the next agenda item. There's nothing for item number 5, but item number 6 is ADR group discussion on potential for returning to in-person meetings.
Chair Kruchnet and ADR members, the town council has asked staff to check in with your group to find out when you would be ready to do in-person meetings again. As I think you all know, the town council did have an in-person meeting this past week on April 14th, and they did offer a Zoom option for the public at home. And so the question for you really tonight is, are you ready to have an in-person meeting, and when? And would you be interested in offering a Zoom option for people at home? So your next meeting is May 17th. I believe the following one is June 21st. So are you ready to come back in and do the in-person meetings? And would you like to do a Zoom option for people at home? The Zoom option would probably cost about $3,000 a year annually to do that. There would be a need for a videographer to do that.
I thought you were going to say per meeting when you said the
No,
$3,000.
no.
Like, oh my God.
No. That would be an annual cost. But anyway, this is just a check-in so that we can get back to the town manager and town council and give them some feedback in terms of when and would you like to do the Zoom option?
So I had some thoughts about this. My first knee-jerk response is, yes, I'd like to have in-person meetings. I do agree with what the mayor said in the last morning after about the extra participation we've had from having things in Zoom meeting. And with a decent amount of elderly population in Ross, it's quite possible that some people might want to comment on projects, but might not feel comfortable coming in. So that Zoom meeting, the Zoom option does seem good. And something else for my fellow ADR members to opine on and comment on is that traditionally it's been very informal. Unlike the town council meetings where there are town council members up on the dais and then everybody else down below, the ADR has been informal and you're very close to the presenters, and all of the people who comment on the projects come up and look at the plans. So we might want to, instead of like for tonight's meeting, there might have been 20 people all together unmasked very close. It might be better if there is a Zoom option, if there's some screen where maybe people are viewing the architectural plans on a screen, so everyone doesn't have to all be crowded around one table. These are just different thoughts I had that I'd love to hear your opinions on.
I think there's a big benefit to the screen, regardless of the health question, in that it's a little bit hard for everyone to see what's going on when we're talking about the paper prints at the table in town hall. So I think the screen is a nice thing to have. That says nothing about a Zoom connection, but just to have the multimedia in the room, I think is very helpful.
Yeah.
If I could comment on that, on the screen option, like the other night at town council, there was the screen option. And so I would assume actually, as you would come back in person, that maybe your meetings would be a little bit more formal, a little bit more like town council, where the staff, say in this case, Matthew, for example, would be sharing his screen, sharing his PowerPoint to a screen, and the public attending would be seeing the screen, and you would probably be at the dais. And then like the town council meeting, there would be the Zoom option for people at home. There was a bit of a technical glitch at this recent town council meeting, but that's been resolved. So the idea is the PowerPoints would be presented on a screen for people there in person. It'd be a little more formal, and there could be the Zoom option for people at home who would see the screen as well.
That sounds like a great way to go.
Yeah,
Laura, Joey, Bark?
I just don't like the added cost to the town of $3,000 a year if we just can do it. I mean, I don't love Zoom. I'd rather be in person, but it's technically, it's actually superior.
Hey, but can you explain what the videographer's function would be? Because if there were just a mounted camera, I don't know. I mean, what's the dude doing or the woman doing?
Well, if I could, maybe I'll describe the recent town council meeting. So, you know, there was staff there, the videographer essentially, and technical staff there that kind of monitored the cameras. There are 4 cameras or so in the town council chambers. So working with the cameras, kind of being somebody, you know, there in person. There was that technical glitch that I mentioned. The person was able to resolve that. So that was extremely helpful. So, you know, monitoring cameras, monitoring the technology, making sure that everything's working, both going out to the people at home as well as internally. So we found it extremely helpful. So I think that in terms of the benefit for those folks who can't come to a meeting, you know, because of age or otherwise, the convenience, you know, is terrific. And it really gives, you know, everybody, well, most everybody, an option to participate. So I think, you know, for the $3,000 or so a year, the technical support at the meeting, and then, you know, providing that opportunity, that option for people at home, you know, I would think would be worth it.
Hey, David, can I do a follow-up on that? I'm sorry, just gonna ask, that was the videographer. How does the mic scenario work? Is everybody mic'd if we're up at the dais, or?
Yes, everybody is mic'd. So you are mic'd, and, you know, you're going to turn the mic on and off. And so you are mic'd. And, you know, we did have the technical support. It worked very well. So I would assume that going a similar direction, it would be a little bit more formal from what Matthew has described to me, in terms of your past meetings. But again, I think having this information up on the screen so that people can see it, you know, in town hall, in the council chambers would be helpful, I would think. And then again, you know, for people at home as well.
So one of your questions, David, is everyone comfortable kind of from a health perspective, I guess, coming back? I'm comfortable coming back. Is everyone else comfortable or not uncomfortable coming back to in-person?
I'll have to jump in. I'm not yet. I have an unvaccinated member of my household that I'm still not going into work yet. I think, David, you said we have a June meeting, maybe as early as I would think I'd feel comfortable, especially with this. I mean, we're seeing a little bit of a spike happening now, so I would prefer to wait a little bit myself, but I wouldn't want that to keep the rest of the ADR members from meeting.
I'm fine either way. I mean, I've only known these Zoom meetings, so it'd be nice to meet you people in person. But it is super convenient, especially on a night like tonight where I was going to have to miss it. And I ended up being able to join once my kids were down to sleep, where like if I had to go in person, I would have had to arrange a nanny or whatever. So I mean, the Zoom is pretty convenient, but I'll go with the flow with whatever everyone decides to do. So,
Joey?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I don't have any health concerns, and I'd be happy to come. And I think it's nice to see one another and be in person. But I have to say, it has been nice to be able to do it from anywhere. And I love personally having it on my huge screen, and I can really be looking at a lot of things. But I do think we should work towards getting back to in person. But I won't object if we wait a little bit.
And David, just to follow up on Joey's concern about cost, you know, I don't know what the town's budget is, so I don't know what $3,000 means to the town. Is that based on the town council's time? Ours usually being, you know, 30 to 40% as long as their meetings, or is that based on what you think the ADR time will be, assuming they have paid per hour?
In response to your question, as I talked to the town manager about this in terms of the ADR, that was the estimate I was given. So that was an estimate for ADR, $3,000 a year annually.
Okay, and I guess another thing we could do is when we go back in person, I think Stephen's suggestion of having the screen in the town council chambers is great, and it would make it better for everybody. And we could always see after one or two meetings if anyone's even using the Zoom. And, you know, if you're getting 2 people per month that are using the Zoom feature, well, maybe those 2 people can come in and wear a mask at that point. At some point, we know we're going to have this for the rest of our lives. People are going to have to go places. It's just a question of, you know, of when. So yeah, so I'd be comfortable starting whenever. If the ADR wants to wait until, you know, June, because I assume that we don't want to have, or maybe it's fine, we're all the town council members in person. Like, would it work to have, like, if Mark was at home for April and May, would that work and he'd be able to participate? And then we could do it mostly in person and 1 or 2 people via Zoom, or does it sort of need to be all or nothing as far as the ADR members are concerned?
My understanding is that really it needs to be all of you. And, you know, and so if there's some reluctance, you know, you could wait until June, kind of, you know, see how things are going in terms of COVID and comfort and safety, and wait until June. But my understanding from some discussions with the town manager and hearing about town attorney issues in terms of, you know, noticing people and so forth as to where you're convening from, there would be certain special noticing requirements likely. And so that could get complicated. So it would be better And I can research this and we can get back to you in terms of more details, in terms of noticing requirements for any ADR member that would want to participate, say by Zoom. But I think there would be special noticing requirements in terms of you doing that. So it would be better collectively for you to decide to meet in person. And when might that be? And, you know, I'm kind of hearing perhaps a start date, or at least a target start date might be your June meeting. And that there's an interest in a screen in the council chambers, and that there is an interest in the Zoom option for people at home. That's kind of what I'm hearing so far. And for us, that is staff, to do a little bit more research and inform you in terms of, you know, that hybrid for ADR members, in terms of, you know, if you're wanting to participate by way of Zoom, what does that mean in terms of noticing, et cetera? And I would need to, you know, confirm that for you, and I'd be happy to.
Yeah, that would be great if you could ask that question. And you know, I don't want to put anybody on the spot that they all of a sudden need to make this decision this second, especially you, Mark, as you voice concern. It might be something you might want to think about, whether or not you feel that June ends up being appropriate, or earlier is better, or later is better, etc. So should we continue this, since it's not a project? Can we continue this via like some email over the next week and hear back from you as to whether everybody sort of needs to be in person at the same time as you believe is the case?
Mm-hmm. Sure. You know, I'd be happy to do that. And in any case, it might be that at your next meeting, I'll be happy to do that in terms of an interim memorandum to all of you. But it might be to put this on the next agenda and then kind of see where you are. We can more formally give you information at that meeting. And then if you're ready to, you know, go in person in June with, say, a Zoom option and a screen, whatever you decide, you could let us know, staff know, at the May meeting, and that could be then implemented for the June meeting, if again, you're ready. But in the meantime, I'll gather more information and give you a memo on that.
That'd be great. Everyone good with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be great. Hey, I should take this opportunity to let you guys know the next meeting I cannot attend. I could send in comments, but it's my daughter's wedding week, and I'm gonna need to be mother of the bride.
Okay.
Okay.
That's great.
And that's the 17th, correct?
Yes. It's just gonna be a push for me to make it, but I can do the research and try to send in my comments, okay?
Wait, or not the 17th, the 19th.
Yeah.
Today's the 19th, sorry.
The 17th.
It's May 17th. Your
Yeah.
next meeting is May 7th.
It's May 17th.
Okay,
Okay, good.
great. So we'll do that.
Okay.
Thank you, David.
Mhm.
Okay, so I guess we're done. And that was a long meeting. Lots of neighbor input and big projects. And thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thanks, guys.
All right, guys, take
Thank you.
care.
Mark,
Oh, sorry. I
Mark-
move to adjourn the meeting.
Mark, if I could
Oh.
interject one thing.
Yes,
You do have-
please.
You do have one more item, actually, item 7. And, you know, it's informational, but I just want to make sure that in terms of the ADR group, you know, you're aware that a representative from Diet and Bhatia will be coming to your next meeting, the May 17th meeting. And just, you know, just to alert you and for you to be prepared, the idea really is that as part of the information gathering that Diet and Bhatia is doing for the housing element update, they're going to check in with you. It'll be an informal check-in. And I think that you will provide valuable input to Andrew Hill, who's the principal who we're working with on this. Because in terms of hitting this target, this 111 units for Ross, the assigned RENA for Ross, you all have a clear understanding working with these applications in terms of some of the constraints and opportunities in terms of housing production. So as you think about this a little bit, preparing for the May 17th meeting, be aware that Andrew Hill will, be attending that meeting, by Zoom in this case, and really looking to, kind of talk to you a little bit, have a conversation and talk to you about, as they put together a strategy for trying to achieve those 111 units for this community over the next 8 years, what do they need to think about in terms of, what are some of the opportunities and what are some of the practical constraints that you could share with them to help them develop that strategy? So I just wanted to, clarify that so that, you come prepared to offer, Andrew Hill some helpful, useful information at that meeting. And that's all I have to offer on that, but I just want to make sure you get that.
Great, no, thank you. And Joey, I know that you won't be at the meeting.
I know.
And usually the video replays of these ADR meetings are very popular on YouTube. So you might want to be one of the millions that watch a replay to just focus on that segment.
I don't know. It's been crashing lately. When I've tried to hit the Ross ADR.
Well, you gotta wait a couple of days. Come on.
It's going viral, Mark. It's going viral.
There's so much popularity. I don't know if I'll be able to hit it that wedding week. Okay, that actually, unfortunately, that was something I would have liked to attend, but I'll find it on YouTube.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. David and Matthew, thank you. And now I will motion for adjournment.
Yes.
No second.
Please.
All right. Talk to you all soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mark. Good to see you again. See you, everyone.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.